So this next speaker is a former NBA player, played for 5 different teams, and he lost his career in the NBA because he stood up for what he believed in, speaking out against the Turkish government and the Chinese government. He's a Nobel Peace Prize nominee. He has been working the circuit. He has been getting his message out there, and we're going to have a great conversation. Please bring up Enes Freedom Kanter to the stage.
Hit me with your best shot. Why don't you hit me with your best shot?
And a round of applause.
Hit me with your best shot. By the way.
Now, before we get started, I just want to say as well, I want to praise Freedom Fest for their commitment to all sorts of diversity, not just of race, creed, of nationality, but also of height. Take a look at this.
Right?
Look at this. This is what true tolerance looks like, folks.
Yes.
So thank you to the Scousins for that. So Enes, there's so much we can talk about
Yes.
in the time that we have. I mentioned how you have been very vocal against the Turkish government. This is something you've been doing for a long time, and you have sacrificed so much to speak out, for what you believe in. How did this all get started for you? What inspired you to start being an activist?
First of all, thank you all for being here, and thank you for inviting me. I don't know if you guys are NBA fans, the Knicks fans, the Jazz fans, no? The Celtics fans? Some
Right here,
in
yeah.
the back. Okay, anyway, so let's get to the topic. But, I think it all started actually back in when I was 9 years old. So I remember, I'm gonna give you guys an example of my country, Turkey. So if you're a kid growing up in Turkey, it's a very different and difficult environment. If you're a politician in Turkey and if you want to be elected again, you do 2 things. You attack America and you attack Israel. So just because of the base is so uneducated, they're like, wow, look at our leader. He's standing tall against America. He's standing tall against Israel. He's standing tall against Christian people, right? And unfortunately, people vote for him for that reason. So I'm 9 years old, and I went downstairs to play with my friends. And my friends, that they're not even teenagers, they were burning American flags. They were burning Israeli flags. They were breaking crosses. And I was like, guys, what are you doing? They said, well, that's what we see on TV. And I remember they gave me a flag to burn it. It was an American flag. So they gave me the flag. They gave me the lighter. I said, burn it. And I looked at the flag. I looked at the lighter. I was like, this is not the right way to do it. So I threw it down. I ran upstairs to my mom. I was like, Mom, my friends are telling me to hate America. They tell me to hate Christians. They tell me to hate Jewish people, hate Israel. What do I do? My mom is like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but do not hate anyone before you meet him. So, yeah, go ahead. So that day, right? That day I give a promise to my mom. I was like, I promise I'm not going to hate anyone before I meet him. So literally 8 years later, the environment that I was growing up in was getting so toxic. My dad is like, you know what? It's time for you to get the best education, and you need to go to America. So I remember I'm 17 years old, and I am coming to America for the first time, and my flight is about to land. And I'm so excited but nervous at the same time. I landed. I remember my first practice with my teammates. 2 of my teammates who were American and Christian wanted to talk to me. I got so nervous, I turned around and left the locker room because I didn't know what they were going to try to say. And then I remembered the promise to my mom. I turned around and started talking to them, and they're like, well, you came from Turkey. If you want to go to a mosque, we know that you're Muslim. If you want to go get some halal food, we can take you to some restaurants. And I was like, that's interesting, And I remember meeting with one of my friends who was Jewish. She invited me over for a Shabbat dinner. And I immediately said, of course not. I'm not going to come to a Shabbat dinner. And then again, I remember the promise to my mom. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll be there. So before I went to her house, I actually called one of my Turkish friends who lives in America. I was like, if you don't hear from me for the next 2 hours, call the police. Because I just didn't know what to expect. Anyway, So I went to her house. It was unbelievable. The food was amazing. Some of the dances that they do, it's like the same thing. Some of the music and every culture was so similar. Then I was going back to my place after the dinner. I started to think, I'm like, there are millions of kids in Middle East growing up anti-Semitic, anti-American, anti-Christian just because of the politicians, you know? And I was like, we gotta do something about it. And then, you know, I've been here since 2009, you know, and I can proudly say that, I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about the story of it too. I can proudly say that I'm finally became a citizen of this beautiful country 2 years ago. It was an unbelievable moment.
Awesome.
It was probably the most proudest moment in my life, but that's pretty much how everything started.
Fantastic. And when you were in the NBA, you know, you weren't quiet. You know, you were very vocal about your opposition to the Turkish government and Erdogan. Tell us more specifically about your criticisms of Erdogan and of what's going on in Turkey for those who may not be familiar.
You know, Turkey once was obviously the bridge of Islam and West. But when Erdogan came into power, obviously just because of all the human rights violations and political prisoners and how Erdogan is using his power, Erdogan's regime using his power to abuse Interpol system and stuff, that bridge is gone, you know? So I remember my third year in the league, I started to talk about the problems that are happening in Turkey, and because of the platform, every time I say something, it was becoming a conversation. So the more the news outlets actually started to give me a platform, I started to talk about it, and those things affected me and my family. My dad, you know, was a scientist. They fired him. My sister went to medical school for 6 years, and actually she still cannot find a job. I think the saddest one was my little brother because, you know, he wanted to be like his big brother and play in NBA and stuff, but he was getting kicked out of every team because of the same last name. So they were getting affected so much, they had to put a statement out there and said, we are disowning Enes. The Turkish government didn't believe that. They sent police to my house in Turkey. They raided the whole house and they took every electronics away, phones, computers, laptops, iPads, because they wanted to see if I am still in contact with my family or not. They couldn't find no evidence, but they still took my dad in jail for a while. But we put so much pressure from here to Turkey, they had to let him go. And then they revoked my passport. They put my name on Interpol list. I mean, in their eyes, I'm an international criminal. Recently, I don't know if you guys seen it or not, but they actually put a bounty on my head. So I can only go to 29 countries in the world because some of the other countries that if I ever travel, then I would be deported back to Turkey, you know? So it's been a very difficult experience to just dealing with a dictatorship like that. So for sure, it's interesting.
Yeah, a $500,000 bounty, right?
Yeah.
The threat of imprisonment, all for simply speaking freely, for criticizing.
Exactly. So that's what I was like trying to tell some of my friends here. Like, you know, I'm sure, I mean, some of my teammates especially, they love to like criticize America, which I'm not saying we're perfect, but many of them calls it trash. Many of them say so many crazy things about America, but I'm like, listen, let's some of those countries out there, you will be hanged, you know? So I just hope that they can understand how blessed they are to be in this country like that.
Yeah, it was only recently there was a WNBA player, right? And the irony of that, a WNBA player speaking out against America when we had a WNBA player imprisoned and detained indefinitely in Russia. But she called America trash. She made some comments, and I believe you offered her a first-class ticket to any totalitarian regime that she wants to visit. So that's very generous.
Not only her, like some of my teammates, I remember I was in a locker room and having a conversation with some of my teammates, and they were like, oh my God, America is so bad, America is trash, and blah, blah. I was like, guys, listen, the season is about to be over. And when the season over, I will buy your ticket. It's a first class, don't worry. And we go to some of these countries out there like China, like Russia, like Iran, like North Korea, like Venezuela, like Cuba, like Turkey, right? And forget about calling them trash. Please, I would like to see you criticize them. You and your family member will be in jail and tortured to death. You know, so sometimes people don't understand because they don't travel enough. So sometimes they don't understand that, you know, how good we have it in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, I believe, 29 countries out of you know, the vast majority you can't go to because of the threats. And I believe that the FBI at one point even gave you a panic button when you were
Yes,
traveling
they did.
around for the NBA. Is this something that you think about on a daily basis? Do you ever get rattled, or does this motivate you?
I mean, it does motivate me first because like that shows that how much they actually scared of me. But the second thing is, I mean, it does feel a little weird to live with a panic button next to your bed, or knowing that you have a bounty on your head and you could get killed in any day and stuff. And every place you have to go, you have to get in touch with the FBI and stuff. So it is little a different kind of style of life. But hey, it is what it is. I'm trying to get used to it.
Yeah. If nothing else from this conversation with Mr. Freedom, take a moment to appreciate that right now we can all take out our phone, go on the internet, and say some equivalent of Joe Biden is senile, or Trump's a big fat liar, and we won't have a bounty over our head.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the little things. It's the freedom of speech
Exactly.
that matters. So to shift gears a little bit, we've talked about Turkey and your opposition there, and the consequences that you faced from that government. The NBA supported you throughout all of that. They had your back, is my understanding. But then you started talking about a different authoritarian regime. It was about 2019 when there were protests in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
And some would say, I'm not saying it, but some people would say the greatest player of all time, LeBron James, started saying, stop talking about Hong Kong. You don't know what you're talking about. And you went up there and you said, no, I think that we should stand up for freedom over there and call out the human rights abuses in China.
Yeah.
What happened then?
Yeah, so it all actually started with a basketball camp. So I'm in New York doing a basketball camp with kids. I remember after the basketball camp, all the kids lined up and taking a picture with me and one-on-one and stuff. I remember I took a picture with this kid, and his parent called me out in front of everybody and said, how can you call yourself a human rights activist when your Muslim brothers and sisters are getting tortured and raped every day in concentration camp in China? I'm still smiling for the camera. I turned around to that parent. I was like, I promise I'm going to get back to you. So I went back to my hotel. I started to study about what's going on. And obviously on the internet, you can find all kind of news. You don't know which one you can trust or not. So I called my manager. I was like, I need you to find me a concentration camp survivor. So he found me one. It was a lady, and we sit down. We had a 1 hour conversation, and she was telling me about all the torture methods and all the forced sterilization and abortioning. I'm sorry, but gang raping and stuff, And I was like, you got me. I'm going to do whatever I can in my power to help you. What can I do for you? She said, nothing. I was like, what do you mean nothing? I was like, so we just had this 1 hour conversation for no reason? She said, no. She said, I live in America. I live a good life here. I can do whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. I have a freedom. Help those 2-3 million Uyghurs who are in concentration camp getting tortured and raped every day. So at that moment, I was like, you know what? I don't care what it takes. I'm going to stand up for these innocent people. So I wanted to do it in a very unique way, because I remember when I was a kid, whenever I watched an NBA game, the first thing I was watching was the shoes. I mean, what color they are, what brand it is, if they're comfortable. And the next day I was telling my dad, please buy those shoes for me. I mean, everybody here loves shoes, right? You cannot show me one person here that doesn't love shoes. So I came up with this idea. I was like, let's reach out to these artists around the world and who's been oppressed by their government, and let's put all the struggles, all the pain, whatever they've been through on non-slave labor shoes, and we're going to go out there and play basketball. And there was no rule against it, because 3 years ago, 2020, when they took us in an NBA bubble, it was during the protests. All the players were putting on their shoes Black Lives Matter, Black Revolution, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. I was like, fine, there is no rule against it. So my first topic was Free Tibet, right? It's a human rights issue, Free Tibet. So I created the shoes. I went out there. I was playing for the Celtics. Our first game was against New York Knicks, opening night, our biggest rivalry, at Madison Square Garden. So I put the shoes on. I went out there and started warming up. And 1 minute before the game started, two gentlemen from the Celtics, they work for the NBA, came to me and said, take your shoes off. I was like, excuse me? They said, you got to take your shoes off because your shoes has been getting so much attention internationally. Obviously, it was from China. They said, you got to take them off. It was the perfect moment for me because I was just getting ready for my citizenship test. Every day I was studying. So I closed my eyes. I was like, okay, there are 27 amendments. My first amendment, freedom of speech. I turned around and said, no, I'm not taking them off. So they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't care even if I get fined. I'm not taking them off. They said, we're not talking about getting fined. We're talking about getting banned. So they were literally threatening me to get banned. Anyway, I played 0 minutes first half. I went back to my locker room. I looked at my phone. There was thousands of notifications. I clicked on the one that my manager sent me. He said, every Boston Celtics game is banned in China. It took them 24 minutes to ban every game in television. Think about it. First quarter, 12 minutes. Second quarter, 12 minutes. Anyway, the game ended. I played 0 minutes, which I played every game before that. I played 0 minutes, and obviously we lost the game. We did lost the game very, very bad. Anyway, so after the game, I told my manager there was a media storm. We were getting media from all over the world. I was like, I don't want to do no media. I don't want because I didn't want my teammate to think that I'm doing that for attention. So after the game, NBPA called me, the Player Association, which I give thousands of dollars every year to protect my rights against the NBA. They said, listen, NBA has been pressuring us. You can never wear those shoes ever again. I talk about the problems that are happening in Turkey for the last 10 years. All I got was support. I talk about the problems that are happening in China. My phone was ringing once every hour. They were telling me you cannot wear those shoes ever again. So they pressured me so much. I was like, you know what? I promise I'm not going to wear free Tibet shoes ever again. They said, promise? I said, promise. We hang up the phone. So the next game, I wore free Uyghur shoes. So they called me after the game, right? They called me after the game. They said, you're a liar. You lied to us. I was like, hold on a second. First of all, I never lied to you. I never said I'm not going to wear free Uyghur shoes. I just said I'm just not going to wear free Tibet shoes. So at that moment, they understand that they're not going to be able to make me apologize from the Chinese government or to make me my tweet down and just and say, sorry, I didn't mean blah, blah, whatever. So after the third game, one of my teammates walked up to me and said, you know this is your last year in NBA, right? You criticize China, you criticize Nike, especially Nike, because Nike, I don't know if you guys wearing Nikes, and if you are, just take them off and throw it away.
The trash is right over there.
Trash is right over there. Because look at this hypocrisy. Nike, the biggest sponsor of the NBA, they stand with Black Lives Matter in this country. They stand with LGBTQ community. They stand with no Asian hate. They stand with Latino community. But everybody knows about the sweatshops and, slave laborers. So I was like, you know what? You guys are hypocrites. I'm going to expose you too. So my teammate said, if you criticize Nike, if you criticize China, you will be done playing basketball. Have fun, smile. I hope we win a championship, but you're never going to get a contract ever again. I was like, sure. February came, and I got released. Release means blackballed. Release means fired. And since then, it was over. It's been almost 2 years now. The saddest thing was, I played 11 years in NBA. I had hundreds of teammates, hundreds of coaches, so many people from the NBA office. Not one of them texted me. Not one of them called me and said, hey man, good luck with whatever you're coming to your way next. Good luck with this, because they did not want me to mention their name. Because if I ever do in an interview, all their contract, all their endorsement deals, jersey sales will be canceled. When I did the whole China thing was a perfect moment because I did it right before the Beijing Olympics. People call it the genocide games. I forget about the NBA. I try to reach out to everybody. NFL, MLB, MLS, NHL, WWE. I even try to reach out to Olympians. I was like, do not become part of the propaganda. They all said the same thing. They said, listen, man, I think what you're doing is so amazing, so inspirational. Keep doing what you're doing. We love you. We support you, but we just cannot do it out loud. I said, why? They said, well, we have shoe deals, endorsement deals. We want to get another contract. I asked them one simple question. I was like, put yourself in their shoes. If your mother, if your sister, if your daughter was in those concentration camps getting tortured and raped every day, would you still pick money and business over your morals, values, and principles? They usually turn around and leave the room, literally. So, since then, I don't consider myself a retired player because I have not retired yet. I still work out and stuff. But yeah, that's what happened.
And the commissioner, Adam Silver, right, he's gone on the record and said some version of, oh, well, you're not in the NBA, not because of anything you said, nothing to do with that. I'm going to bore you with some numbers really quick. There's been about 5,000 people who have ever played a game in the NBA. Only about 40 of them have ever had multiple games where they've scored 20 points and secured 20 rebounds in any game, which is an incredibly impressive feat. This guy's one of those people. He's done it at least 10 times, right? He's not in the NBA, not because he can't play. He's in the NBA because they're choosing profits over people, and they're not backing down from China. So I'm sorry they're wimps, man. I'm sorry they're not backing down.
I know, man. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about, this country, and congratulations again on your citizenship and being a part of it. Several folks... You got a home here if you don't have a home in the NBA, I'll tell you that. Several folks have asked you, and you've deferred every time. You say you're not sure yet, but they've said, hey, are you going to run for office? We need your voice. Do you have an answer to that question today for this crowd?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say I remember I was a green card holder, and I did this interview and said, hey, in 5 years, I'm going to become an American citizen. I'm so excited. And the host said, you don't have to wait 5 years. If you marry with an American woman, it's only 3 years. I was like, oh, I didn't know. The next day, I was getting so much DMs from all over America. It was people were sending me wild pictures. Anyway, I don't want to talk about those. But America has been so good to me because I remember people keep talking about me losing my career in NBA, but I signed up for the things that are happening in Turkey. I lost my family. So comparing to losing my career, that's literally like nothing, But America has been so good to me, and I just cannot thank every American that ever lived in this country because, from day one, they opened their arm, they gave me a warm welcome, and now every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, I get so many DMs and say, hey, man, we are your family now. You can come to our house. You can celebrate the Thanksgiving with us. You can celebrate Christmas with us. And I have been going to some of my friends' house to learn about Christmas, to learn about Thanksgiving, to learn about July 4th, because Independence Day, to me, I remember my first year, my first few years in America, all I thought was just amazing barbecue and just fireworks, Then you learn about what that day really means to every Americans out there. So every time now I go to the Hill to talk about all the human rights violations and stuff, people are from both parties actually say, hey man, what are you doing? Stop wasting your time. Just bring your voice to the Congress, to the Senate, and just go out there and just talk about what's more important. So yes, when the time is right, I am thinking about running. I hope I got your support.
You got about 1,000 donors in the room.
I love it. No, I love it. No, because we need strong voices who actually loves America and tell people that, not taking your freedom for granted and how blessed and lucky to be in a country like this. So
awesome. We're running out of time. I could ask you a million more questions. Okay. I'll ask you two at once. All right. First is, what advice would you have to young people? The second is, would you do anything that you've done in terms of your activism differently? Do you have any regrets in standing up for what you believe in?
I think my one advice to young people out there is that people need to understand, we need to leave our differences on the table and try to find what we have in common. Because we only have one America and we only have one world. So we need to make this world better together, till one of those crazy billionaires find another planet to live, this world is what we have. So we need to make this country, we need to make this world better together. And that's the amazing thing about America. You can be Jewish, you can be Muslim, you can be Christian, you can be Mormon, you can be whoever you are. You can be white, black, Democrat, Republican, whoever you are, you can peacefully live in this country. So my one advice to all these young kids out there is just not take your freedom for granted and just smile.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And in terms of your activism, I mean,
Any
thinking back, you
yeah, any
sacrificed
regrets?
so much.
Good question. Any regrets? I mean, I had a conversation with my manager, and I was like, well, he said, you could have played another like 6 years in the league, and that's like with endorsement deals and contracts, that's close to like $50 to $60 million. And you lost your career now. You lost your family now. Like, what are you doing? I was like, you know what? Someone had to do it. Forget about the NBA. Literally, like, you look at Hollywood, you look at big tech, you look at academias, you look at farmland, some of the Congress and local Congresses. I started to ask that question to myself. We keep talking about our freedom in this country, but literally, many of it is pretty much run by the biggest dictatorship in the world, China. I'm asking this question to you guys. How can the biggest dictatorship in the world can control a 100% American-made company like NBA, like Hollywood, and fire a U.S. citizen? That's just very interesting. That's just very bizarre. So we should not take our freedom for granted, and we have to stand strong for it.
I agree. And Enes, thank you so much for being here, for
course.
fighting your fight, for having courage to speak up. This guy's going to be speaking all day tomorrow in breakout sessions, so you haven't seen the end of him.
I want to say I appreciate you all, man. Definitely means a lot. Every time I see a crowd like this, every time I see freedom lovers or like you guys, it gives me so much hope and motivation to fight. So I really appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you
All
for
right.
being here. Final round of applause for Enes.
Hit me with your best shot.
Good?
Man.